All right, everybody, welcome. Our journey begins. Page one of a whole bunch of pages. I don't even know how many. Um, and again, trust me, I know how to get you through this. Do remember, we're going to need a couple of these functions up here. So remember, you can make things bigger and smaller. Drawing these things on pen and paper is frustrating. Like there's a base level of frustration that always takes place. There's going to be mistakes that get made. I've been doing these for years and years and years. It's kind of part of the process that when you are drawing them, you will make mistakes. And I know that Cami may make that worse because you're going to be trying to draw with a mouse or I'm going to try some touchscreen here to see how that works. It's going to get frustrating at times, but you can do it. So let's remember there's a couple of tools here. You can make things bigger and smaller with that. And I know that somewhere in this packet, there's some maps that I printed on sideways because I was trying to save paper. Not that that matters now. But I believe in here, yep, in this function right here, you can always turn the page sideways, and then you can work on it and then flop it back. That might be helpful. So let's talk about the rules, what these things are. And you saw a whole bunch of them. They are, did I not do a definition? What they are lines that connect points of equal values on a map. There's the state standard so that you know where we're at, if that interests you. So I'll skip that definition. We'll come up to it eventually, but let's jump in with the rules. And as we're drawing these are the definitely important rules that you are going to want to pay attention to. Okay. Isolines, never, and I'm doing that one in all caps, touch or cross. Here's the idea with that. Let's say I had a line, and you don't have to draw this because you'll be drawing enough, don't worry. Let's say I had a line that represented 10 inches of snowfall. And then let's say I had the next line up that represents 15 inches of snowfall. Okay. If these two lines were to cross or touch right there, what I'm saying, if I'm following the definitions of what an isoline is that at that point, it's simultaneously 10 inches of snowfall and 15 inches of snowfall, which doesn't work, right? I always say it with my height. I can't be 5'9" and 6'9". That wouldn't work. You can't have two separate values. The whole purpose of these things is that we're like lining up values and plotting them out. So it's going to get confusing at times. And then if you're doing topo maps, people always say, well, what if you got some places like a cliff or it backs up, and they have special symbols to account for that. We're not going to have to worry about that with the basic level of ones you're going to be doing, but they should never ever touch across. So when we get to the ones where I'm going to be grading them, it's like the easiest first thing to see. If I see two lines touching, done. Like you lose your points. And if you look at any of the answer keys that the region sends out, it's on every single one. It's like the one base level screw up thing you can't do. So never ever touch across. Deal? I'll erase that because we don't really need it. Next, rule number 2. Isolines generally make parallel curves. As they're going, they tend to kind of go in parallel directions. Exactly perfectly mathematically parallel? No. They'll kind of flow and sometimes get closer, sometimes get further. We got to figure out what that indicates. But generally, a parallel flow between them. 3 is pretty much what the definition of an isoline is. All points on an isoline have the same value. All right. Isolines never end in the middle of a map. You either have to make it to the edge or loop around to make a complete loop. Loop to make a loop is kind of awkwardly worded, but you get the point. So there's going to be times where maybe a line goes off the edge of the map, and in our heads, we're going to be clever enough to know without drawing it that sometimes that the data goes off the map and comes back on. You would only need to see what's in this box on the map, but the values might do that. Likewise, you couldn't have the next line here just like go like this and then just stop. That's a big no-no. And that's another one where the regents, should it happen, which is unlikely this year, the regents will chop points. There was one a couple of years ago that teachers got all bent out of shape because there was values right next to the edge and people connected it and skipped like this last tiny little centimeter and lost their points, even though they knew everything else they were doing. So please make sure. And if you want to like say like, okay, Regents, there's no problem if you go off the edge a little bit just for exaggeration's sake. That doesn't lose points, but ending it the tiniest little bit inside the map does. Cool. Isolines tend to have gentle curves rather than sharp angles. Angles has the letter G in it. Okay, so when you're drawing them, just try to make them nice and like smooth. And I'm anticipating that Cammy's gonna be a pain in the butt with that. If that ends up being like, that's not a critical rule. That's when we're getting good at these and we want to learn to really make them neat. They tend to have more smooth curves. If Cammy makes that like the difficult, then don't panic about that rule as much as making it to the edge, things like that. All right, what about when they're closely packed together or spread far apart? Now, think for a minute. What did that mean on a topographic map? We did that already. If the lines are close together, what did that mean in terms of what the hill slope was like? In fact, I'm here at home. You guys measured the gradient of the street right outside these windows. And you saw the one where my son was riding his little tricycle down and flipped it and scraped his face on the road. And then we calculated how steep that hill was, right? That's all the same thing. When isolines are closely packed together, that represents a rapid change. That western end of my street has a pretty steep hill if you're 5 to 6 years old, not a tricycle. So that's where he was going really fast. And if we looked at a map of that, the isolines there would be more closely packed together. We called that a high gradient, and we mathematically calculated that gradient. We're going to have to do it again. Here it comes. So it's like really easy to spot in topographic maps because it's a steep hill. We can all we all know what a steep hill is. Look at there's a steep hill. There's not a steep hill, right? We all, through our life experience, have figured that out. So that's why topographic maps, why it's good to do that first. Getting into weather, it gets a little bit more abstract. With temperature, what if they're close together? It's a high temperature gradient. That means like there's a rapid change from cold to hot on a map. Now, maybe what that means is that like cold air is blowing in, a cold front's coming down from Canada. And what that would do is like kind of compress the cold and the warm until the cold all pushes through. That'll be semi-important. The big one's going to be when we deal with pressure maps. If there's a rapid change in pressure, what that does is make the air blow faster. The example I always use here is if you crank up a air compressor, get it as packed as it can be, and then open it up, the air comes out like crazy, right? Because there's a big difference between the pressure inside the cans and outside the cans, so the air moves quickly. It's a high gradient, just like in topography, it's a steep hill, or in weather that will be fast winds. All right, here's maybe the most irrelevant rule for our year of COVID. Isolines are always drawn in pencil. Like I said just a few minutes ago, the nature of the beast with these things is to make mistakes. Through these videos, I'm sure at some point I'm going to draw one and say, that doesn't go there, that goes here. It's kind of the process that as you draw them, you'll see how the patterns emerge and you'll see little mistakes that you made. So you got to erase those. So if we're in the classroom, you're going to need to use pencil, because if you use a pen and then you try to scribble it out and then you draw something else, it's automatically like it's wrong, right? So here we are in the world of Cammy. You got this little eraser tool. Cool. That's going to be great. You know what I mean? So something erasable, which I guess by default we're doing. Related to the frustration that will definitely set in at a couple points. It is important that I take my time and relax. They can be frustrating, but again, we're not going to rush here. And a lot of times, I don't know, sometimes people dig this that haven't liked other aspects of earth science. Sometimes people latch onto this. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say it's fun because it sounds like lame teacher speak. You'll have fun. You're going to have fun here with 16 pages of packet. All right, so let's finally draw some isolines now that we've babbled for a while. So probably best to blow up your map the best you can. I know these Chromebooks are not ideal. So what I tend to like to do is look for either the highest value or the lowest value, and that's where I'm going to start. We're going to pick purple. Okay, so I see a 10 down here. We're going to draw isolines with an interval of 1. We'll learn about that a little bit later, what that really means. So my lowest value here is 10. I'm going to go through the 10, off the map. See, it didn't work underneath that thing. Might have to do some sliding around, but we'll all be patient. We can figure out a way here. Okay. Now, I know some clever folks are going to say, okay, I know how to do this. They're going to turn off the video and boom through it. This is where I'm going to ask you to trust me, because I'm going to show you a couple little techniques here that, yes, this map's very easy, but when we get to very hard ones, which are going to happen like a couple of pages, these techniques that we picked up here on the easy maps will prove helpful. So stick with me. Do these one at a time. You'll be good. All right, so I see an 11 here. 11 is my next value. I'm going through there. A couple different ways to think about it now, which again will prove helpful in the near future. If you're going to count from 10 to 12, you can't do it without passing by 11. So I'm going to write an 11 right in here. In the future, you won't be doing this, so don't think that you're going to be drawing numbers all over these and get panicked. It's going to be fine. I'm just doing that on our first practice one, just to start to get the hang of the idea that there is an 11 between a 10 and 12. Even though that value wasn't like measured and wasn't indicated on this map, it's there because you all know that you can't get from 10 to 12 without passing by 11. That's what this map shows us. If it's 10, this map doesn't have a label. We don't know what it is. But if it's 10 somethings here, maybe it's the depth of the water. If it's 10 feet here and it's 12 feet here, there's no way you didn't pass by 11 feet as you were going from one to the next. Yeah. All right, 12. We're all following like a roughly parallel pattern. There we go. I'm going to try one of these touchscreens, which may be a failure, but let's see. 13, 13, 13, 13. That little squiggle is not ideal, but it's not too bad. All right, now, again, the clever folks that you are, I'm sure you're figuring out the pattern here, and you could probably just do this, right? But let's take a moment and think about some techniques for when these maps get harder. I got a 14 here and a 14 here. I don't quite know. Let's pretend I don't quite know what this is going to look like yet. One thing that I'll do a lot is just say, well, it's got to be from the 14 to the 14 at the very least, right? That is probably right. Okay, and then you can like step back and you can look at it. And again, I know this map's very simple, but you can step back and look at it and say, all right, where else am I going here? Well, I see from 13 to 15 here. You can't get from 13 to 15 without going by 14, so the 14 probably goes there. And I got another one up here between 13 and 15. So that's probably it. Okay. Here's a different way to look at them. If I'm going to draw my 15, what is an isoline really doing is one way to think about it. Well, let me switch colors here. That 14 line you just drew. I don't know if that worked. That 14 line you just drew. What do all values on that side of the line have in common? And what do all values on that side of the line have in common? You don't have to draw those arrows if you don't want, but pose that question. What are all the values over there on that right side of the map on the other side of the 14? And if it's clicking that those are all higher, you're getting the point. And if it's clicking that these are all lower, you're getting the points. Because once you get to drawing these a lot faster than we're doing right now, I appreciate your patience. That's really going to be the thing. As I start to draw my 15 right here, I say, okay, 16's higher, so it goes on that side. There's a 15. 17's higher, so it stays on that side. Stays on that side, stays on that side. There we go. I separated the higher numbers from the lower numbers and went through all the 15s. Okay. All right, don't do the 16 yet. Let me show you two possibilities. There's two correct answers on this 16. Here's what I would guess if I just said go, a lot of people would do. And it's perfectly acceptable. This is correct. No problems, no rules broken, 100% right. However, I want to show another possibility. And that's this. If I take the 16 and do that, I didn't quite reach the edge. That's okay. If I move my stupid head over here, what I can do is have the 16 come back on the map and do that. And we're perfectly okay. Since we're smart people, we know that that 16 really, it's one line. I tried to draw a dashed line. Didn't work so well, but you get the point. That's one line. It's just that our map didn't allow us to see part of it, and that's okay. There's part of that line that's missing. I mean, there's part of the 15 line that's missing. That's kind of the premise of always going off the edge of the map, is that sometimes things will go off the map and come back on. Here, is that a big deal? No. If you just drew the 16 like originally, the original example, cool. That's great. But when we get to doing maps in a few minutes that have like a crazy number of lines, if you're trying to make sure every single one of them's all the way on the map, and some of you will, I know that because I've been doing this long enough, you'll stop watching the videos, you'll say I can do this, and there will be like, I'll just see such an array of lines that it's dizzying. If you start to draw and you're trying to cram like many lines into a little tiny corner of this to get around to other ones, you're probably making a mistake. One of the beauty things about this is that the simpler the better. You're not going to hear teachers say this very much. The less pencil lead you use, the more likely it is that you're correct. And I know we don't have pencil lead. I know we have Cami magic ink, right? But the less writing you do, the more likely it is that you're correct. If you try to make these things overcomplicated and have all kinds of craziness going on, it's not so. It's less likely that it's right. Keep it simple. Go off the edges when you need to. Well, red. We don't want red. Not that it really matters, but. So keep it simple. Off the edge. Off the edge. Job done. Okay. All right, what do you think? One page down. I know it feels long, but again, if you follow my methods, trust me, I've been doing this for quite a while. You guys are going to just, you're going to be rocking these. You'll be doing them in your sleep. It'll be no problem. I've designed this packet to take us through the steps nice and slow. So I know that we just went for, how long? Too long. Holy cow, 18 minutes. That's long. But we got time, okay? Stick with me. You guys are going to do great. We'll catch you on page 2.